I wrote down an entire list of ideas for a second account that I could play on the side and upload. The problem that I ran into though was I couldn't just settle on one idea. So instead, I'm going to play every single one of them for 100 hours each instead. This time, I'm locking myself to free-to-play worlds only, which means I'm not able to use most training methods, I can't use many quests to boost my stats, I'm locked out on most areas of the map, and only have a few skills. That sounds horrific, but Jagex also won't allow me to sell this entire list of items on the Grand Exchange for the first 20 hours, which means making money is significantly harder. I'm also not allowed to get uniques from clue caskets for the first 10 hours, and most resources are camped by bots. Not only that, but my agility level will be locked to level 1 because I can't train it, and there's significantly less teleport and transport options. So yeah, I do like a challenge, and you're more than welcome to follow along and steal all of the ideas if you want to. The goals for the 100 hours is to access the 750 total level worlds to get away from most of the bots, complete all of the quests available and get as many best in slot items as possible, and maybe showcase some of the stuff that you may not even have known was available to free to play in the first place. So, hour 1, I complete Tutorial Island, and I made sure to tell the tutors that I'm a new player, because this unlocks Adventurer John. And all you need to know about this guy is that he gives you some free stuff at the start for leveling up, and I'll be coming back to him later on. I then ran over to start Misthalin Mystery by the Lumbridge Swamp. It's a quick quest with no requirements, and it gives some free uncut gems that I can sell, and some crafting levels, which I'm going to need for my upcoming moneymaker. I then ran over to the combat tutors, pretended I was in desperate need for some runes, even though I just dropped the ones I had on the floor. Then started blasting random monsters as I started Sheep Shearer. Then 20 balls of wool later, and that's a little bit more crafting XP. Every brand new account in RuneScape gets one free teleport to the Stronghold of Security by talking to Count Check, so that's where I went next for my free 10k GP. If you get lucky like me, then you can take some free food from the people fishing near Barbarian Village. I then made my way down, claiming all of the free cash, and even though the bottom level doesn't give any GP, it does give the best in slot Fashionscape boots. And because I'm locked to free to play, there isn't really that many options for boots, so I may as well get them now. If you didn't know, there's now a third option for boots as well, where it's the fighting boots and the fancy boots combined, so I went with those, and they look pretty damn good. A Grand Exchange next, I sold off all of the uncut gems and the junk that I'd slowly acquired, and this is where the money making grand plan starts to kick in with stage 1. I invested most of my GP into gold bars and home teleported my way over to Al Kharid. I'm going to be making myself one single gold necklace, which gets me to level 8 crafting because of all of the quests I've done, and this unlocks gold amulets. Thankfully, these amulets aren't on the restricted items list that I was talking about earlier, so I can sell these later on at the Grand Exchange. The gold bars are 100 GP, and the amulets are roughly 150 GP. I would have had to train my crafting like this anyway, so it's a 2 birds 1 stone scenario, and it helps me get started out. After making all of the amulets, I made sure to buy out all of the random crafting items so that I could sell those for a profit on the GE as well. After a very long walk to the Grand Exchange, it was now hour 2, and after selling all of the random items and the amulets, I was now able to buy 200 gold bars. I was then making my way over to Draenor, unlocking items along the way from Gilbert, but the main reason I came here was to get myself a Chronicle, which will help me teleport near to Varrock without needing to train magic. It was then rinse and repeat, creating a whole bunch of gold amulets, buying random items from shops along the way, and building up the cash stack. At this point, I was able to do a trial run for my second moneymaker, which was creating pie shells. Essentially, you buy pie tins and pastry dough, then combine them to make the pie shells, which higher level players will use for cooking and money making themselves. Doing this method, you can roughly expect to make about 200 to 250k GP per hour, depending on the prices, and you don't need a giant cash stack to get this going either. The only problem is you can only buy about 500 pie shells every 4 hours, so by hour 3 I'd hit that cap and I carried on with the gold amulets and trained my crafting instead. I had enough gold bars this time to hit level 37 crafting, and once I sold all of the amulets on the Grand Exchange, I had my first white cash stack of 114k. This was enough cash to knock out some of the early quests. Most of the quests in free to play just require you to hand in some items that can simply be bought. I mean, why spend 3 hours hunting implings when I could just buy all of the beads and save that time instead? I also bought myself some starter magic gear to kill some of the quest enemies, but also to passively train my magic, as I'll need 55 magic for High Alch. If you're locked to free to play or you're trying to escape free to play via a bond, then alking is absolutely crucial as it's essentially one of the best money makers for free to play players. Anyway, I was running around the map completing various quests like Cuck's Assistant, X Marks the Spot, and Imp Catcher. And Jagex has actually updated some of the dialogue for these quests if you have all of the items already on you, because they know that most players just buy all of the items and bring them to the quest start. So Wizard Misgog here even accuses me of stealing all of the beads myself. With Imp Catcher done, I've now completed my first Adventure Path task, which I'll be cashing in later. I then completed Witch's Potion, which gave me enough XP to finish another task as well. Then Dorrit's quest for mining, I simply just give him all of the ores and I get a bunch of mining XP back in return, as well as some more completed tasks. Hour 4 now, and I completed Goblin Diplomacy, Romeo and Juliet, and attempted to multi-quest Restless Ghost and Rune Mysteries. If you don't really know what multi-questing is, essentially you just try to trigger quest checkpoints that are close to one another. So for both the Restless Ghost and Rune Mysteries, I have to go to the Wizard's Tower, for example. This does save a lot of time, though it does get a little bit confusing if you don't have a written plan and you're just winging it like me. After clearing out Wizard's Tower, I figured I was close to Draenor Manor, so I may as well start and finish Ernest the Chicken, as it all takes place within the manor. Then returning back to Varrock now, and I have started and finished up Demon Slayer. I'm not sure why, but I thought this quest actually gave some attack XP, but it's just quest points and the Silverlight. Which, to be fair, is a great item if you can upgrade it in members, but as a free-to-play player, it's more of a fashionscape item. As I was in Varrock already, I decided to go back to the Grand Exchange to buy some trading items that I will be using a little later on as they're quite cheap. So low level axes, pickaxes, and scimitars. I tried training woodcutting very briefly, but I soon got overrun by a horde of bots. I grabbed the first Adventurer Path task for hitting level 5 woodcutting, and then trained my magic up for a little bit instead and hit total level 100. It's only 650 more to go for the 750 total level worlds to escape the bots. I carried on training magic because I wanted to finish up the level up tasks. I trained on some goblins and cows, and I stocked up on some cow hides, which brought back a little bit of nostalgia. This was my go-to moneymaker back when I was a child, and it brings back good memories. It's just a shame that I can't actually sell the cow hides on the Grand Exchange until hour 20. Eventually, I leveled up enough to complete the magic tasks, and so I wanted to see what free stuff John had for me. He gave me a bunch of free runes and staffs for training up mage, which was nice, then a few logs and ores for training up woodcutting and boosting my mining via quests. I then finished Restless Ghost next, which gave me a whole bunch of prayer XP, and that's fantastic because training prayer in free-to-play kinda sucks. At the start of hour 5, I was dropping off the Rune Mysteries package for Aubrey. I grabbed a ton of runes from him because at this point I'm now rushing for 55 magic so that I can high alch. As I said before, I'm kinda winging this whole thing, and so I tried a whole bunch of different methods. I tried bones to bananas first, but for this you kinda need a lot of cash to keep up the XP rates. So I abandoned that idea and then went to Hill Giants. I gained a whole bunch of hit points, prayer, and combat levels here, which was super useful, and I even managed to get my first Giant's Key for Obor later on. Around hour 6, I was planning to log out, so I invested the GP I had into pie dishes. Then I logged back in the next day and made some quick pie shells to bump up the GP stack again. The next method I tried for magic was enchanting emerald amulets into defense amulets, and again, I think if I had a bigger cash stack, this probably would have worked out, but I wouldn't recommend this if you're broke like me. I then found out iron plate bodies and mithril pickaxes were profitable to low alch for some reason, so I grabbed a bunch and alched them as I completed a beginner clue in the bank. Then went back to Hill Giant and started low alching in between magic hits for even faster XP per hour. Then, during hour 8, I tried to tally grab a whole bunch of stuff for profit, but that didn't work either, so I went back to Hill Giant so that I could brainstorm something new. And after a few levels, I came across an incredible way to train magic that would not only profit, but it also didn't need a big cash stack to start it up either. Although, to kick this method off, I had to feed Thurgo a red berry pie and complete the Knight's Sword quest. And this instantly boosts me to level 29 smithing, and I'm now able to superheat iron bars. I bought a ton of iron ore from the Grand Exchange along with some nature runes and superheated all of them through to hour 9. and this was some of the best magic XP per hour that I'd seen so far, and the best part is that I would be getting some passive smithing levels and even profiting. So if you're stuck in free to play looking for a way to level up and high alch, this is for sure the best way, at least with the current prices. With high alch unlocked at hour 10, it's time to skyrocket the progress. I sold off the rest of the iron bars and bought myself some alchs. The reason that high alch is so powerful is because that I can combo it with almost anything else that I'm doing in game, and it only takes up a couple of inventory slots. It also turns all of that walking around the game into a money printer, and I'm gaining a whole bunch of magic levels. The first thing that I did was a beginner clue that I had in the bank and progress Vampire Slayer, and because my cash stack isn't that high, I do occasionally have to teleport back to the Grand Exchange to buy more alchs, but the cash stack should exponentially increase. I then defeated Count Draenor, which was a massive boost for my attack level and unlocked a whole bunch of tasks. I spoke to John again, and at this point I don't really need these weapons, so I just alched them instead. I then finished Rune Mysteries, did a quick random event to unlock all of the music tracks, bought even more alchs, and then finished Pirate's Treasure and infiltrated the Black Knight's Fortress. One of the benefits of free to play is that there aren't really any super long quests, and you can knock out all of these pretty quickly, especially with the quest helper plugin on RuneLite. By hour 11 I completed Prince Ali Rescue, and a fairly important quest for free to play is Below Ice Mountain. It unlocks a new emote, but more importantly it unlocks the Ruins of Camdozel, one of the few area expansions that free to play ever got, which I'll be coming back to in the future. Next was Corsair Curse, which also unlocks another area being Corsair Cove, which has the Ogress Shamans, which if you didn't know are a great training spot, and the Shamans actually have some good drops. I bought even more alchs and started Shield of Arav, and now very quickly I've played RuneScape for about 20 years, and still, even to this day, I'm learning something new. There was an NPC behind the Blue Moon Inn that was shouting in public about a player being mean to him. I spoke to him and he asked me for some money, and I'm pretty broke, so I said no, and then he just started screaming that he hated me instead. He still might even be there on Wall 308 shouting my name, I've got no idea. Anyway, hour 12 passed by and that was Shield of Arav done. I could have probably saved about 15 minutes here, but trying to get a co-op partner for this quest is sometimes a little bit tricky because everyone's already done it. Dragon Slayer was next and was also the last quest on the list. I bought a bunch of death runes for the fights, then some more alchs and chronicle charges. The first couple of map pieces are quite simple to get, but I was slightly worried about the Lesser Demon and Melzar's Maze, up until I accidentally found a safe spot for him. With that guy dead, I picked up the last map piece, sailed over to Krandor, blasted Elvarg with the death runes and ripped off a head for Oziek. With that iconic quest done, I can now wear full rune, I get an incredible amount of strength and defense XP, boosting my combat level up, and I've also finished a whole bunch of tasks for John. I then claimed all of the rewards from him, and by this point the rewards are just free alchs, but the supplies aren't too bad. To celebrate finishing every quest, I finished another beginner clue that I had, and because I was over 10 hours into the account now, I could actually start to get uniques from the caskets, but that's not what happened, unfortunately. I just got a whole bunch of trash. I sold off the excess death runes on the Grand Exchange and bought myself a bunch of best in slot items, including a rune axe, a pickaxe, and a scimitar, as well as a bunch of amulets. Also, by now, hopefully you've realized that I put a ton of effort and hours into my videos, so if you want to see more of these, then do subscribe. Hour 13, and because of the quest XP, I could actually train my melees now. I figured that I had pretty decent stats to go up against hill giants face to face, and between every hit, I was also alching. There is a second hill giant spot in free to play, which is next to the Giant's Foundry by the old duel arena, but it's kind of out in the middle of nowhere, and despite trying it for a little bit, I ended up going back to the old ones by Varrock instead. This area is just pure nostalgia, and it's right next to the Grand Exchange as well, so resupplying and buying more alchs is a lot easier. The only problem is this spot can get a little bit busy sometimes. For the most part, I was alching ruby necklaces, mithril pickaxes, and miscellaneous armor and weapons. There are a few calculators online that show you the profit per alch and how many that you can buy per 4 hours. I'd personally recommend mithril pickaxes, but you can only buy like 40 of them per 4 hours, so whenever I knew I wouldn't be playing for a couple of days, I'd put in an offer to buy as many as possible to stock up. The ruby necklaces are quite a good one to do consistently because you could buy like 18,000 of them per 4 hours, but the margin for profit is just not as good. The levels started to come in quite fast at Hill Giants and I was making some good money as well. And just before hour 17, I got myself 40 attack, which means I've unlocked the iconic rune scimitar. If you haven't played old school for a little while, you might not know about the scimitar ornament kits that you can get for free to play now as well. They're only cosmetic, but they match really well with the God Rune sets, which after hitting level 40 defense, I also bought. It did create a massive dip in my cash stack, but it was definitely worth it. The Saradomin set was one of my favorites when I was a kid, and it's still probably one of my favorites even to this day. I decided to take a break from the Hill Giants for now and I started working on some more skilling. It's been a long time since I've done some proper low level skilling because every account I've made in the past few years I usually just skip all of the early levels because of quests. So it actually felt kind of nice chopping oaks and taking my time with it. On hour 21 I'd moved on to the Willows by Draenor Village, and usually I would have public chat set to on, but sometimes free to play can be worse than Wintertalk chat, which is saying a lot. Anyway, if you didn't know, forestry is available in free-to-play worlds as well, so you get an invisible woodcutting boost now when you cut trees with more people. Also, the trees are now on a despawn timer rather than having a chance to be cut down every time someone gets a log. You also get some events. I think I only saw the Rising Roots one, which is decent XP. You can also get the forestry bag, but it's kind of useless as almost everything that goes into it is members only. At around hour 26, I'd hit level 50 woodcutting, and at this point I had completed an offer in the GE for a ton of pickaxes. So I started alching them whilst completing a beginner clue, and then went back to Hill Giants to finish off alching the rest of the stack. I got myself another Obor key and a bunch more levels for prayer, hit points, and strength. On hour 29, I'd finished alching them all, so put in another offer in the Grand Exchange for a ton more, and then went back to woodcutting. I spent roughly 5 hours here going from level 50 to 60, which now allows me to cut down U's, which are fairly AFK and a decent moneymaker, and if I was planning to play this account for more than 100 hours, I'd have probably thought about moving on to those and just going for 99 woodcutting on the side whilst playing my completionist account. But time's ticking, and so I moved on to the next skill, being fishing, unlocking some more tasks for Adventurer John. Once you finish enough tasks, you do get a small XP lamp that can be spent on some of the gathering skills, which is nice, and I spent mine on fishing. A little while later, and I'd run out of the free bait that John gave me, so I bought some more bait along with a few thousand feathers. I stayed at Draenor until I got about 20 fishing, which then unlocked the spot by Barbarian Village. Now, I'm not sure when it was updated, but there's a permanent fire at the Barbarian Village spot. So to take advantage of that, I cooked everything that I had caught so far in Draenor so that I had the level to cook everything at Barbarian Village as well. Hour 35 and I'm giving back those fish that I stole at the beginning many times over. This is another one of those nostalgic places in RuneScape for me. I've spent so many hours here over the years and I'm probably going to be spending many more here as well. Especially if I'm going to be creating like another dozen accounts for 100 hours each. In total, I spent about 10 hours here fishing. I probably could have just gone for level 50 or so, but I was still enjoying it. If I wanted to be super efficient, I also could have been doing some tick manipulation, but at that point I wouldn't be having fun and also wouldn't be making much progress on my completionist account either, which I've been playing this entire time. So, hour 45 and I'd hit 60 fishing. I went over to the Grand Exchange and collected some mithril pickaxes that I left an offer in for. Then I sold off my old Addy set and the extra feathers to buy some nature runes. And then it was back to Hill Giants. Gotta get through the Alk stack, and whilst making progress on that, I was also getting flooded with tons of combat levels. I figured if I'm going for 750 total, then I should be working on these a fair bit as well, because they make up a good majority of the skills in free to play. So I bought even more Alks and just slayed hundreds of Hill Giants, getting myself some more keys for Obor later on. Hour 47 and I slowly started to run out of Alks, and so I decided on fire making next. And here I kind of made a big mistake which I could not see coming. You see, I decided to burn all of the willow logs that I had in my bank, and sometimes when I'm skilling like this, I kind of just go into like a zen mode and I don't really stop. So I kept burning them until around level 59. At which point I realized I should be burning maples instead, which, yeah, is a fairly silly mistake. But what was a little shocking to me was the price of willow logs when I was playing this account. They were 130 GP. Maple logs, on the other hand, were 13 to 14 GP each, which is like 1/10 of the price and far more XP. I guess people are getting tons of maple logs through Kingdom and Miscellanea and member worlds, and the price of willows have gone up because of forestry. I'm not really sure though, so if you have any ideas, leave a comment, although as of editing this video, the price of willows have gone down to about 100 GP. I'm not really sure what happened. I remember willow logs being like a junk item worth close to nothing, so it is a bit strange to me to see them at this price. Fire making is one of those skills that's super quick to train, so I went all the way to level 70 for this one, which took me into hour 54. And by this point, all of the alks I bought were done. I went with steel two-handers this time and still had some ruby necklaces left over as well. I got to work alking them at my usual spot. It's honestly not that hard to alk whilst doing other stuff, especially when you're just on auto retaliate against regular mobs. As soon as you hit and see the XP drop, you alk and then click the mob again. I was doing this whilst playing my other account as well, and I'm not really one for super efficient stuff, so I'd give this a try if you haven't done it before. I made sure to bury all of the big bones that the hill giants dropped because they're actually fairly expensive to buy nowadays. There are other methods though, like scattering vile ashes, which I'll be doing a little later on. Anyway, as you can see on screen, I made tons more progress here at Hill Giants. I probably could have moved on to some different mobs at this point, but I was having fun. By hour 59, I bought even more alks and camped Hill Giants for some more hours, getting myself a bunch more level ups, drops, and log slots through some random events. Hour 63 and I had a good look at the cash stack and my stats to decide what to work on next. I figured I could get some very quick cooking levels through wines, which, yeah, if you didn't know, brewing wines is actually free to play and is super cheap as well. I bought grapes for 8 GP each and the jugs of water for 53 coins each, and I really love the dopamine that you get from this cooking method. Essentially how this works is when you make unfermented wine, it takes 12 seconds for it to ferment and give you the XP. But that timer resets with every unfermented wine that you make, and so if you're playing actively, you can get some absolutely gigantic XP drops. Although you gotta be a little careful at lower levels, because if you've stacked thousands of unfermented wine at a lower level, then chances are you'll get a ton of bad wine which won't give any XP at all. So it's best to let some of the stacks of XP come through to level up first, and then go for a big XP drop. Anyway, it didn't take long to make all of that wine and to get to level 70. So I then spent the cash stack on uncut sapphires to train up crafting next. These are a nice way to train in free to play without losing too much GP, as they're essentially break even. It's also fairly quick XP at around 130 to 145k XP per hour. Cutting diamonds is the best XP that you can get in free to play at about 260 to 300k XP per hour, although you'll be losing quite a bit of GP doing that. By hour 67, I'd finished cutting all of the gems and I'd hit level 60. I could have gone for a higher level as it was fast XP, but I have so much more to do. I hadn't even started ranged yet, so with my cash stack I bought thousands of arrows and each short bow. Then I got to work on some cows, unlocking some more adventure tasks and hitting level 700 total. I went over to John to see what free stuff I could claim, and it was decent stuff to be fair if I decided to train ranged earlier on, but at this point it wasn't really that useful to me. After hitting level 30, I went to Minotaurs as they're fairly low level as well, and I still need to build the Skull Scepter. I wasn't here for long at all when I got the log slot for the first skull piece, so I then went over to Flesh Crawlers and instantly got the next skull piece as well. I then tried to go for the third piece from the Catablopons, but they drain your stats and they hit fairly hard. So I then had a look on the wiki for training spots in free to play, and I've never killed giant frogs before. I had no idea how good they were either. They've got a fairly decent HP level of 23 to train on, and they drop big bones, which is really nice. Usually, if I was playing on a members account, I'd have skipped these early range levels with questing or with a cannon, so it's been a long time since I've actually trained it from scratch. I also wanted to get level 40 range just so that I could equip the best in slot range setup, which is green D-hide. And of course I bought the gilded set as well, as it's fairly cheap and it looks great. Next up to build the total levels was rune crafting and mining. I started off with rune crafting, and I'll be honest, this is probably one of my least favorite skills in the game, and trying to train it fast and free to play is quite rough. I decided to make earth tiaras. It's fairly cheap and way faster than regular rune crafting. I started off at Varrock East Bank, then I run to the earth altar, make the tiaras, and then teleport back to Varrock, and then just rinse and repeat. Now, you may see in the chat box that I've hit 750 total, but that's not actually enough to enter the 750 total level worlds. You see, it doesn't count the level 1 member skills, so as a free-to-play player, you actually need 758 total level, which I reached not long after on around hour 72. Now, at the start of the video, I did say I wanted to showcase some small stuff that you can do in free-to-play that maybe you didn't know about. I'm going to be starting off with the Crack the Clue sets. Every other year, Jagex will put out a special Clue Seeker event, and the whole of the RuneScape community comes together to try and solve it. 2 of these events were available to free-to-play. I'll link a guide in the description for this if you want to give them a try. But for this first one, you buy a bunch of specific items and some energy pots. Then dig or do emotes on certain tiles around the map, and you'll unlock the Ornate Armor set, which I'm a big fan of. The helmet looks a little bit weird, but the rest of the set looks pretty good. The other Crack the Clue set that you can get are the Robes of Ruin. There are 2 different ways to get this set. You can do it like the one before, where you're just digging in random spots and doing emotes, but there's a much simpler way. You could just buy 28 specific items and then dig at the water altar on a very specific tile. By doing this, I was told I found a new special clue, which then leads on to step 2, where I did 15 or so different emotes in a specific order, which spawned a mysterious old man who let me break into the Varrock West Bank vault. At this point, I was free to claim the Robes of Ruin and any loot I wanted, but also, technically, infinite money. Okay, so if I open this, I now have infinite money. Yes! I got infinite money now. And this does actually have infinite money from it. If I keep taking from it. I wonder if I could swap left click to take from. You just rapidly click it for free money. Oh, your infinite money bag needs more time to restore its power. Oh, so it is on a cooldown. And then, what else? We got, over here, should be the robe, one of the robes. Hell yeah. And then this one. And then this one. Oh, hell yeah. This looks so good, man. It looks like Virtus, doesn't it? Like a cheap version of Virtus. Hour 72 now, and I had one last skill that I hadn't really worked on, which was mining. Luckily, I'd unlocked the 750 total level worlds at this point, so I could avoid most of the bots. I started in the Varrock East mine until I hit level 15 mining, and then took the 3 iron rocks in the Alcarid mine. I spent a few hours here and got all of the way up to level 41, which then unlocked the best in slot pickaxe for me, the rune pickaxe. On hour 74, I decided to go back to Camp Dozel, which I unlocked at the very start of my questing spree. This place is a nice little expansion for free to play, and in my opinion is one of the best looking places in the game. It also has a whole bunch of different training methods and some log slots to get, a few of which are for the Baronite Mace. There's 3 different parts for it, and once built it's used to go against the golems that you can find down here, as it has a 15% damage increase against them. But I'll talk more about those in a moment. To get the 3 parts, you have to do different training methods, and the first one I worked on was mining Baronite. It's quite AFK and has some nice passive mining XP. I did make a little mistake here though. You see, there's 2 different items you can get from mining here. The Baronite shards and the deposits. You use the shards on the forge, and it's a kind of currency to unlock buffs here. But the Baronite deposits are the ones that give a whole bunch of collection locks. Of course, you get the Baronite weapon piece, but you also get a bunch of relics that can be handed into the Varrock Museum, and they are log slots as well. But the mistake I made is, there's another item that you can get from these deposits, being the Imcando hammer, and it's basically just a wieldable hammer. The thing I didn't realize though until much later on is the hammer is actually members only, which kind of sucks. I guess they don't want to give free to play the insane ability to equip a hammer. But yeah, I did get a whole bunch of passive mining and smithing from this, and lots of log slots as well as shards, so it wasn't all bad. I just wish I looked up to see if the hammer was free to play sooner, instead of just assuming it would be like everything else here. Hour 82 and I'd gotten everything from mining, so moved on to fishing next. This is sort of a prayer and fishing hybrid training method. It's not the best XP, but again, it's kinda AFK at least. You catch the fish, cut them up, and then sacrifice them like bones. But the main reason I'm doing this is because of the Baronite weapon part, and it didn't take me very long to get it. So I then moved on to the golems. These guys drop the third and final piece that I need to build the full weapon. They also drop an item called a body core, which acts kind of like essence, but only for the body altar, and gives 10 times the runes and XP. So it's a combined combat and runecrafting method. Unfortunately, I was here for a long time killing these golems. It's supposed to be a 1 in 250 drop rate, but I got incredibly unlucky on them. I did get a lot of XP and level ups, sure, but it took me well into hour 92 to get it. So, there's only 8 hours left now, and I still feel like I have so much to do in free to play, so I went on one last blitz to try out all of the content that I could. I still had to get the other 2 pieces of the Skull Scepter from the Stronghold of Security, so that's where I went next. I decided to mage the Katabla ponds this time and brought some better food. And with a little bit of exploring, I did end up finding a safe spot, which I was very happy to find because fighting these things head on is not fun at this combat level. After around 50 kills or so, I did get the scepter piece I needed, so I then moved on to Ankus for the 4th and the final piece. Again, with a little bit of exploring, I did manage to find a safe spot that worked pretty well. Whenever I'm killing mobs, I like to use defense casting because most of my magic XP comes from passively training this skill. And just like the Katabla ponds, I wasn't here for very long when I got the last piece to create the scepter, which was great because I was burning through my death rune stack that I bought. I then went to the bank, grabbed all of the pieces and merged them together to create the full Skull Scepter. If you're going to be getting the scepter yourself, make sure you come back to the Stronghold of Security, bottom floor, and talk to Zoltson, who can imbue it. If you don't imbue it, then on the very last charge it's going to crumble to dust, which would just suck big time. Now, it's only got a few charges in it, but you can charge it back up with bone fragments, which you can buy on the Grand Exchange, or if you're an Iron Man, you'll have to get scepter pieces again and grind them down into fragments. I figured I'd use some of the charges to use up those body cores I got from the golems in Camdozal for some runecrafting XP. After that, it was time to take on some moss giants so that I could get a different boss key for Bryophyter. There was a recent update that added elemental weaknesses to certain monsters around the game. One of those monsters was moss giants, and so fire spells now do 50% extra damage on them, which is huge. So I used up the death runes I had in my bank, and my max hit with Fire Blast is a 24, which is really quite good considering they only have about 60 hit points. The rate for a mossy key here is a 1 in 150, and this is kind of the end game for free to play in my opinion, because if you could camp these guys for keys and fight Bryophyter often enough, then you have a good chance to get the Bryophyter essence, which as of making this video is roughly 12 mil GP. And the price of a bond is about 13.4 mil, so it's a nice way to escape free to play. But even if you are free to play and have no plans on becoming a member, it's still a really good goal to aim for. It's one of the rarest log slots to go for outside of the Stale Baguette, and it has a chance that whilst alking it won't use a nature rune. It's also the best in slot staff for magic in free to play. What was annoying about this whole thing was that I ran out of death runes, and as soon as I bought some more, just a few kills later, I got the key drop. I wanted to make sure that I was fully prepped for the bosses, so I wanted to get Protect from melee. I couldn't believe how much big bones cost, almost 500 GP each. I found that a little bit too expensive, but luckily Vile Ashes are a little bit cheaper in terms of GP per XP, as well as faster XP per hour, so I just bought those instead. I only needed the one level because I buried a ton of bones whilst killing hill giants, but there we go, 43 prayer. I bought some swordfish and cashed in all of my Obor keys first. This guy drops the hill giant club, which is a nice 1.2 mil right now. But with only 16 or so keys, I wasn't feeling hopeful. Although on my first couple of keys, Obor did drop another key, which has a 1 in 16 chance of happening. I also got a few combat tasks completed too, which was an added bonus. And also, because it's a 100% chance to drop a beginner clue, I do that after each kill. Because I was running around the arena for the boss kill, I'd normally have to restore my run energy every single time. Sometimes I'd use the minigame teleport to Ferox and restore at the pool, but there is another way to get there. I could teleport to Lumbridge and use the canoe system to get to Ferox instead. Eventually I decided to bring all my teleports for clues into the Obor fight with me, and I'll be honest, for the first couple of kills I wasn't sure what to expect, so I brought a full inventory of food, but I rarely ate more than like 3 swordfish. The way I was killing him was with Mage. I'd start with a snare and then just fire blast him and hope for the best. Then whenever the snare timer was up, I just kite around the room and try to get another snare, and it seemed to work alright for me at least. On kill count 17, I managed to get all of the combat achievements, which isn't really that impressive considering this is one of the easiest bosses in the game, but yeah. And next up was Bryophyter, and I only had the one key for this. I wanted to try and go for as many combat achievements as possible in one run. There's one for keeping Prey Mage up at the end of the fight, but I kind of forgot that prayer potions don't exist in free-to-play. I went on autopilot trying to line up the Growthlings. There's like a combat achievement for killing them all within 3 seconds. But whilst trying to sort that out, I got smited, and my thought process was like, oh, that's okay, I could just sip on a prayer potion and regen it back. But no. I didn't even get the task for the Growthlings until the second set of them spawned. I did get around 3 tasks in 1 kill, so it wasn't all bad, but no Bryophyter essence this time. What I did get was another beginner clue scroll, and whilst completing it, I alked all of the various rune items that I got from Obor. Then shortly after, I started opening all of the caskets that I built up, and the thing is with beginner caskets, they're notoriously bad, like abysmal. But it is nice free-to-play has at least some form of clue scroll, and there are a few log slots to get. It's also where you get the Rune Scimitar ornament kits that I talked about earlier, and the mole slippers if you're really lucky. For me though, I got a few log slots, but nothing too expensive. There were a couple of more things I wanted to try out before the 100-hour mark, and one of those was Ogre Shamans. You get access to these when you complete the Corsair Curse, and most free-to-play only players will camp this place, as it's a really good spot to farm alkables and build up the rune stacks. I was only here for a couple of hours or so, and I got quite a few rune helms, and it was fairly low effort. There's also a collection log to unlock here, which is the Shaman Mask, which is purely cosmetic. If I was playing this account for more than 100 hours, I'm not sure if I'd camp these or the Moss Giants for cash. These seem like more stable money and a good spot for Iron Men. But for a main account, maybe Moss Giants are the better choice when factoring in the 12 mil essence drop. For hour 99, I wanted to try out some Castle Wars, and yeah, that's right, you can play Castle Wars for free. I'd imagine it's quite fun if you had tons of players, but on a weekday there was only like 6 people playing, most of which were just AFK for some passive tickets. I did find one guy though who was around my combat level and seemed like he wanted to take part, so that was fun. I think it was muted though because he didn't say anything and he was just doing emotes at one point. And maybe I should have saved the Castle Wars games until the weekend where there was possibly more active players, but I guess one added benefit was that I won both games that I played, and so I got more tickets. And so, just before the 100-hour mark, I cashed in my Castle Wars tickets, And if I was going to keep one of the items, it would probably be the sword, but something I'm sure most of you know is that you can sell the items back to the ticket shop and you get a full refund, meaning you can buy one item to get it in the collection log and then sell it back and buy another for the collection log. I somehow forgot about that until editing this video, so I went back and unlocked a bunch more items. With only 2 Castle Wars wins, I got 7 log slots out of it, which is pretty good. I still had about 5 minutes left on the clock, so I took over all of the ancient artifacts that I found in the Camp Dozel over to the Varrock Museum. And then it was back to Varrock East Bank to have a look at everything I had accomplished and things I missed out on. I did get the majority of the combat tasks available done. I think if I had gotten a couple more Mossy Keys, then I'd have likely got them all, but I started running out of time. I did of course complete every quest. I managed to do that by about hour 12 or 13 or so, but that's with Quest Helper and having done them multiple times in the past. Also, can't forget about the adventure paths. The free stuff that you get from John isn't that much, but I guess for new players it is a nice little incentive. I remember taking on random jobs from players when I was a kid in banks, and they'd give me tasks like, go mine me 100 iron ore and I'll give you a rune scimitar, and it kind of reminded me of that sort of thing. For the collection log, it says I've got 24, but after logging back in and claiming those extra ones, it bumped it up to 30. Having a look at the bank now, and because I'm going to be playing other account builds for 100 hours each, and obviously my completionist account, I don't see myself logging back into this one for a long time, so I felt a little bit guilty having all of this in the bank, knowing the struggles of being free to play, so I took everything out and donated it to a random player. Before giving my thoughts on the account build overall, I just want to quickly thank all of my channel members, Henrik the Epic and Kamal at the supporter tier, and Titas and Kay at the benefactor tier. Your support means the world to me right now, and I'm going to be uploading way more often in the coming months. So yeah, 100 hours in free to play mode done. If you think I should carry this account on, or maybe do a free to play Iron Man instead, then give this video a like. My last account build was a level 3 skiller with 1200 likes, so it has to beat that. Also, if you're completely new to my channel and have never heard of me, let me introduce you to my main completionist from scratch series, which should be on screen now.